Hi all, welcome back to my channel CloudTechs Club. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about how to deploy two-tier application on Docker host. So this is going to be one of our practical videos where we will see how to deploy applications on Docker host. Suppose this is our Docker host. Where we have deployed Linux or Ubuntu flavor or CentOS, on top of which I have deployed something called Docker packages. So once these Docker packages are start and enabled, it will create something called a bridge network. This is also known as Docker 0. Now, this particular Docker host or a virtual machine or EC2 instance going to have one ETH0 port to carry the traffic outside this machine. Suppose this is something which is connected to our ISP or internet. So now this all we have already discussed in our last lecture. So one end of Docker ETH0 gets connected to ETH0 and another end gets connected to your containers. Let's suppose container C1 and container C2. And this Docker 0 having the IP addresses in the range of 172.17.0.1/16 range. This Docker 0 or bridge network is going to act as a gateway for container C1 and container C2. Now, in this lecture, we are going to deploy two-tier application. So two-tier application, let's say for front end, I will take as WordPress, and this WordPress also needs to save the data. For saving that data, I will use a database. In this case, let's see MySQL. So I'm going to deploy two containers, container C1 as your database container, which is going to use MySQL, and container 2, which is my front-end container running the WordPress image. So C1 will get the IP address of 172.17.0.2 and the WordPress will get the 117.17.0.3. We will map this database which is running inside the Docker host to container C2 WordPress to use this as a database to store the data. So let's go ahead and see how we can perform this within our lab environment. Now let's go ahead and deploy this two-tier application within our Docker host environment. For this, I have already installed Docker on my system. So the Docker version is 26.1.4. Let me also check the Docker daemon, systemctl status Docker. So Docker daemon is up and running. Let me also show you one more thing, IP address A. So you can see the bridge network is already created with Docker 0 and it's having the IP address starting with 172.17.0.1/16 range. I believe I have couple of containers running on this host. That's why it is showing 2VE networks. Let me just check it here. Docker ps-a. Yes, so I have couple of containers which are already running. Let me just go ahead and stop them and delete. Docker container stop. Take these IDs. Oh, sorry about typo. Let me delete the another one. This all things we have discussed earlier in our lectures. Let me delete them as well. So none of the Docker containers is running right now. Let me clear the screen. Now let me check Docker ps, Docker ps-a again. And let me also check what images I have. Okay, I have 3 images here. I'll just delete them as well. Docker image rm. I'll provide the image ID. Let me also provide the image ID all at the same time. Should work. Okay. Okay. Now it looks good. Now we can start the 2-tier application deployment. We need to deploy 2 containers, one with WordPress and another one with the database. So database in this case is MySQL. So WordPress needs some sort of a database to store the data. So we are going to use here database as MySQL. So let's go ahead and deploy our first container, which is MySQL in this case. For this, write the command docker container run -d to run this in the detached mode, -- name of the container. I'm going to define it as DB server. Next, I'm going to assign few environment variables. We will discuss about them once we will start writing our own Docker files, images. For now, just look how it's been done. MySQL root _ password. So password I will give here as just 1 2 3 4 and 5. Okay. I'm going to assign another environment variable, which is MySQL _ database. I will name it as WordPress. This will create one database where I'm going to store my data of my WordPress application inside the SQL container. Going to assign another environment variable, which is MySQL _ root _ host & for all, and the image of the container. which is MySQL in this case. Let's run the command. So Docker daemon is pulling image from Docker Hub. Then it's going to launch the container. Looks like the container is ready. Let's check. Docker container ls. Okay, so we can see the container is there. It is up from 37 seconds. And you can see here the command docker entry point. So in Docker file, there is a component called entry point where the Docker services are defined so that it won't stop until unless the container is stopped. So likewise, we discussed in our earlier lectures, the Docker containers get stopped once the process is complete or the process is stopped due to some particular reason. That's why we define these particular entry points within our Docker images to keep the services within the running state. Next, you can look around the ports. So define this particular port 3306 is defined within the Docker image. To see these parameters, we can run the command docker image history MySQL. Okay, so here you can see the expose map 3306 TCP, and it is mapped with this particular port. Here you can see the similar information. You can see the entry point is defined here, docker entry point.sh, which is copied into the usr local/bin. Now to check if the provided WordPress database got created within the MySQL container, we need to move inside the MySQL container. For that, let's run the command docker container. Sorry for the typo. Execute -it to write the terminal board. DB server as the name of the container, /bin/bash. Now we are inside the container. Now to log in inside the MySQL, we need to use the IP address, username, and the password. For that, I need the IP address of this particular container. So let me log in to the duplicate session here. Docker container ls. So this is the container name. I'm going to inspect it to see the IP address of this container. Docker container inspect container ID. Okay, so I can see the IP address of this container is 172.17.02 and the gateway you can see here as 172.17.0.1. So I'm going to write the command here, the MySQL -h 172.17.0.2 -u for the username and -p for the password. Now it is prompting me to provide the password. I don't think I am forget that. 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, now I am logged in to the MySQL. Now see what databases has been created inside. So you can see database WordPress got created inside MySQL container. For using this particular WordPress database, we need to write the command use WordPress column. So whatever the database is on the top, it starts writing data to that one. So that's why I have used the command use WordPress. Now let's exit from here. Now let's create a WordPress container which will save the data to the database container in database which we created called WordPress. For that, we can write the command docker container run -d to run in the detached mode. Name of the container I will write as WordPress. I also need to define the port number as it uses the default port as 80. So I have defined 8090 for my host. I'm also going to define few environment variables. WordPress _db _host. Here I need to provide the IP address of the database container, which is 172.17.0.2. Another environment variable going to be the WordPress underscore DB user. It's going to be the root. Another environment variable, WordPress underscore DB underscore password. It's going to be the test 1 2 3 4 5. And the last one, which I'm going to define here as WordPress underscore DB underscore name is equal to WordPress. We use the database which we created with the name of WordPress. Last, I have to provide the image name, WordPress. I can give it latest here. Alright, let me just double check the command. So docker container run -d to run in the detached mode. The name of the container is going to be the WordPress. The port number on the host on which it will be active is 8090, and the port going to be HTTP. WordPress DB host, which is the IP address of your database container. Next, the DB user as your root, DB password as test 1 2 3 4 5, and the DB name is WordPress. And in the last, we have defined the image of the container, which is WordPress. Let's hit enter. So it is unable to find the image locally, so it is pulling from the Docker Hub. Alright, now let's check whether we are able to see both the containers. Let's run the command docker container ls -a. So I can see both the containers, WordPress latest and MySQL. Now let's verify the connectivity from outside. So the IP address is 192.168.1 and docker container ls. So on port 8090. Let me just copy this IP address. It's 8090. Okay, now we can see the WordPress application is opening. I'll hit continue with English. Fill the rest of the information here, like cloudtechs.club.com. I can fill my name. I can provide my custom IP address, the password. Choose your own. I'm going to give Taron @1111. Now my email information, CloudTechs Club @gmail.com, and I'll just copy this password and install WordPress. Save it so that I can log in again. So I'm giving my username and the password what I gave earlier, and let's try to log in. Okay, now I'm able to log in to the WordPress application. Now if you want, you can write any of your application, any of your blog post. Here we have written hello world. We can view it. So this is how you can deploy a two-tier application within your infrastructure. So in real time, when you will work, you need a load balancer, you need a DNS, you need a lot of stuff to work on this. But yes, this is a small way of seeing the things, how we are going to deploy the two-tier application. And that's it for this particular lecture. Now I hope you have got some understanding about how to deploy two-tier application within Docker host environment. If you found this helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.